Hey everyone, welcome to our 40th episode of My Project Hell. I'm Kelly Schockler, and for the next 20 minutes, we've got a short but informative trip to the land of project management, the place where Paul and I try to keep things understandable, practical, and provide you with some useful information and tools to take away and apply into your own projects wherever you're at.
That's right. And I'm Paul Thompson. And in this episode, we are going to go deep on a hot topic. But before we get started, I want to encourage you guys to join the conversation, right? It's not about Kelly and I. This is a conversation for everyone. So throw your ideas, your comments, your thoughts about the topic in the chat. And hopefully, everyone here will be part of the conversation. All right, Kelly. So where are we going with this deep dive?
I'm excited about today. We have decided to talk about the definition of done. So it gets thrown around quite a bit, right? In project management circles, especially I think in agile-based technology projects where you've got customers who are wanting what they want in a product or an app, and scope creep kind of becomes this fact of life. And like most things, definition of done, everyone's got an opinion on what that means. So to start off, Paul, I think you and I agree that knowing when your project or your sprint or your release, whatever tangible feature, product, or service, knowing when that's finished, that's a key success factor, right? But so many times we're making assumption that the team and the sponsor, the customer, they have the same expectations that I have about what it means to be done. And we don't talk explicitly about the definition of done. It gets talked around in meetings. So, and this is sad because when we're talking about the definition of done, it's really, we're talking about quality assurance, right? We're
Yep.
talking about this is the definition of done, what it means, customer agrees, project team agrees, and these expectations have been met. So, I mean, think about it. I'm in the middle of hiring contractors for some stuff around the house. So when
Okay.
I want someone to paint the outside of my house or landscape my yard, I want to be sure that we're on the same page, right? So a good contractor is going to partner with you and create a shared understanding about what done means. And they're going to give you an opportunity to ask some questions, make sure your expectations align. So in my case, the house is going to have 2 coats of exterior paint. The trim's going to be painted. The painters are going to clean up the site when they're done. And then I'll get a chance to inspect the work with the lead painter. It seems simple, but this always doesn't get done or thought about. And so we're not talking about checking off a box called done. This is about putting clear criteria in place and creating that shared understanding about expectations and what it means to be complete with the scope of the milestone, the feature, the release, the sprint, and even at the project level. So
Yes.
those are some of my thoughts on definition of done. I know you have some thoughts on what it means.
I do. And so we deal a lot with infrastructure and big technology projects. And one of the things we struggle with is that there are so many stakeholders, right? Because sure, there's a project owner and everything, but you've got so many different groups that have to contribute or receive product out of it that each of them has a very specific thing they care about. And until that is fulfilled, they don't really feel like you're done. One of the things that we've done, and in fact, it's so important in the rope framework, we actually documented and everything about always getting together with your stakeholders, sort of setting that, what does done equal? And most of the time for us, it's pretty straightforward once you get everybody talking. And there's also a lot of, well, it's complete for this group, it's complete for that group, but it's not done until X is finished. And 9 times out of 10 for us, that X is finished means all the handover to operations has been completed and they've accepted it and taken it and it's now ongoing, operationally supportable feature or new environment in place. So, but really without getting everyone involved along the way and each of them sort of defining what's done to them, you start to see how, you're going to have a whole lot of, we're done, I'm out of here, I'm good. That's fine, but you still got people behind them in line with their hands out going, where's my, where am I?
We're not done. I expect
Right.
this to be in place. So yeah, I think you bring up one of the biggest pitfalls of not defining done is that different people have different expectations. And if you don't understand that, then you've got individual definitions of done. And then you've got some of the other issues that are downstream impacts on your schedule and your budget and your scope, the quality. And then I've seen stakeholder trust and team morale diminish.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And more than even the customer, your project team's out there feeling like they're in the middle of some project management madcap version of the Amazing Race. Where's the clue? What are we doing? Where are we going? What's done? Just recently experienced this myself. So, all right. So there's some serious things, negative things, and impacts that can happen when we don't do that. But how do we define it? Let's talk about how we define definition of done and at what there. I think there's different levels you can define at. Thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. If we think so, let me back up here a few steps. So one of the things about getting that definition is, not getting so much detail that you've basically written the project plan into the definition, right? You don't need that. Oftentimes, a good measure is a statement of work. And as consultant, I write a lot of those for our team. But you need to have a statement of work that procurement can see is done, right? They want to know because they don't understand technology. They don't understand the project, the deliverable. They want to know, how will I know that you got what you paid for? So if you ever really want to kind of see that level of detail, Google search, find some statements of work and read through them and see if you can understand, how would I know they're done, right? How would I know this is complete? Would I feel comfortable signing a check on the other end saying they did their work?
Well, as project managers, though, I mean, unless we're working with a vendor, we don't often have a statement of work. So how would do you have an example of defining done within the project context? Maybe an element like, sprint or release, something like that.
So as I mentioned, we put it into the rope framework for moving a data center. We kind of have three simple, we have a definition to start, right? In order to move into the sprint, you have to have completed your pre-work. And that's sort of that pre-work definition of done. You've completed a build sheet and you've selected a date. Not rocket science, but you cannot go in the sprint and start moving your stuff until that's complete. Then you have, I've done my work in my sprints and I'm moving my application from one location to another, right? The definition there we kind of set down with everybody was everyone on the call that has a stake in, is this successful? Are we good? Sits there and goes at the end of it, I'm comfortable, it's good. We all give it thumbs up. That doesn't mean that you're done with the whole thing. It means that from this point forward, we are willing to say, okay, if something goes wrong, you call help desk, service desk, operations, the project is handing it off. And then done is all the specifics that follow on, because some of those middle of the move, 2 a.m. call might be, I'm good that it's moved. We just have to restart the printer in the morning. Somebody that comes in at 8 o'clock will turn it off and turn it on and we'll be good. So those go into the punch list. And then that punch list is followed through on the next day or so. And that's sort of that definition of done, right? We have the final, you've completed the punch list, you've turned over documentation that was required. You have made your announcement to all the users that everything is good. And all of that communication is handled. They're kind of cleanup things, but they're important cleanup things. So you have kind of 3 definitions along the way, right? Definition to get in, your pre-work is done. Move is complete, definition is done. You're completely done and we never want to see this thing again because we can't be dragged on. We're moving on to the next one. So that helps kind of define it along the way in simple steps that everybody can understand who's participating.
Well, I want to make sure we understand the nuances though here of you just described what some might think, hey, those are just deliverables in a project plan. Okay, great. So let's look at it from a milestone perspective in your project plan and talk about definition of done from a milestone perspective. Because I think, sure, you've got the milestone, and the example I'd like to share is from a user acceptance testing milestone that we had in a software development company. And we were having extreme problems getting this quality software in front of the customer. So our milestone was user acceptance testing, UAT. And we had, deliverables under that. But even if I had checked off all of those and they were completed, that is not the complete definition of done. We had to create criteria to be clear what it meant first internally for us to be able to put this in front of the customer to begin with. And then we had the customer join us in after we came up with a basic set of criteria. Here's what we're going to do to make sure we get quality in front of you for a UAT ready release. We had to know what had to be done to allow the customer to be able to start executing on UAT. So a couple examples of what those criteria were. All known high priority items were completed, released into the build, retested, and passed by customer success. Okay. There had to be a completed end-to-end integrated test cycle by our internal QA team. And then the customer had reviewed, accepted, and signed off on the UAT plan. Very explicit criteria, right? And we had to get specific because they needed to know what it meant to be done with the build when we handed it to them. Because prior to that, we'd been giving them buggy, defective software, and it really destroyed the relationship. So specificity is a must, but I'm thinking, can you get too specific with this stuff?
Well, yeah, and that's what I really liked about it, right? You said they had to sign off on UAT. That means UAT may change, it may be a little more
on the plan.
Fluid. Right.
Yeah, on the plan.
Yeah, that may be a little more fluid as things go and change and features come and go into the sprints and what comes. But the done part is they're signing off on it, right? So that kind of helps give you still that flexibility of being, God help me for using the term, agile, with still that ability to stay fluid, but know that it's not done if we can't get past this deliverable component.
Right. Defining done is an agile concept.
It is. And I think though everybody has that opportunity to use it, whether you're in really, I think we used to call them quality gates before, the term agile came in, and then everybody said that, but it was, how do you know, right? How do you put enough detail in? How do you keep it flexible enough? Because Lord knows we wouldn't have a job if the project executed exactly as it was planned 6 years earlier, right?
Right.
So these are things that all stay fluid, but you need that rigidity to kind of your tether, right? You need tether, you need guardrails just to kind of keep everything within there and then still allow you the flexibility to move around.
So I'm thinking about what is a good enough definition of done, right? So at face value, I think good enough definition of done, because you don't want to get into that analysis paralysis
Right.
routine.
Stay out of the weeds.
Yeah. So if I, as a PM, have included my internal team, the subject matter experts, and possibly the customer vendor, if applicable, in the process of providing input and defining the criteria for what it means to be done and complete, and general consensus has been sought, which is not always possible, but
It's tough.
there's some merit to the action, to trying, right? That's good enough, in my opinion. If everybody's able to reflect back the definition of done, expectations have been established. I think that's as good as it gets.
I like that. I like that. Now, do you see it different though from kind of those milestones and those components being done to the overall project completeness?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think this definition of done can be applied to different aspects of a project, whether it's agile or waterfall, right? Or WAGIL, which is a lot of the ways people are practicing project management.
Sure.
So in a overall project, we refer to these as project completion criteria as part of a solid project plan. So this is the piece of what is done. What does it mean to be done with your customer? Whether your customer is internal in your organization, right? As PMs, you got to look at, even if you're doing internal projects, people you're doing projects for are your customer, or are they external? So things like your product or service has been operationally handed off, complete with documentation, training. If you have a project closeout activities checklist, those have all been wrapped up. You've done your retrospective billing, etc. Customer is formally signed off on all the deliverables, which I don't think you would be at the end if you hadn't been doing that. It might seem like no duh stuff, but it's another way to ensure that you and your customer are in alignment about how the project's going to wrap up and what that looks like.
Interesting. Sorry, Katie's telling us there is a good question if we can wrap this up quickly.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of interested by her question, but from what we've talked about, really, it's getting your definition of done, working with all of your stakeholders, kind of establishing milestones or points along the way to say these pieces are complete, they're done. How do you know you can move on? And sometimes you're moving multiples at the same time, right? So there's a lot of moving parts. How do you know when you can put one down and take the next one forward? So it's about getting enough specificity that everybody agrees, and then having at the end a complete set of, we've completed all our done to this point, and we've met the criteria to close everything up.
Well, so how about this, French? This is a question from one of our listeners, Rick. How do you handle it when the sponsor changes the definition of done? How do you handle the sponsor when you've reached the agreed upon definition of done and they don't want to close the project?
Right. I want to hear your answer, because I know I've run into this a lot of times, but I want to hear how you would respond to this.
Well, I would want to understand. So Rick, I'd want to understand why, what are their reasons, understand where they're coming from, make sure that I'm listening and not doing what I like to do is jump ahead and judge. Why are they doing this to us? Understand why. And then once I understand why they want to change the definition of done, how does that impact everything else? And then do a little research on those downstream impacts and what that means in terms of time, money, and resources and quality, right? Because it's going to impact those things. And, you know, I don't know how changing the definition, it could be a positive impact, but more likely than not, maybe negative. Rick, Paul, what do you?
So changing your definition of done is changing your scope, right? Because truly that's a big piece of it, because your done says this is the scope, we put it in a box and tied a bow on it. So you're dealing with scope changes. And a lot of times what we find is we're doing things really well, and you start to get that rhythm, the project's really going along. Sponsors love that, and then they start adding to it, right? Well, let's not be done until we get these other 3 departments cut over as well, and all good things, right? They're telling you you did a great job, and no good job goes unpunished, so here's more. So it really is about treating it just as you would any other scope change, making sure you document it, making sure that you have it in your RAID log, the decision, what are the risks associated with it, changing that version, and really thinking of it in those terms and putting, just as you described, Kelly, money, resources, and time to the impact of changing that definition before everybody says, yep, we're good with it.
And if you come back and you tell me it's going to cost X more dollars to go this route, that's a really great way to change people's minds when they actually see the ramifications and impact on budget. When they say, like to Paul's point, we want to wait till these other departments are involved. Oh, really? You do? Okay, well, here's how much my time's going to be cost. Here's how much my project team's time's going to cost. Start adding that up into thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and all of a sudden, oh, reality check.
Great. We may want to carve it off as a phase 2 later.
That's a great mantra.
All right. Well, this has been great. I love this discussion, but it is time to wrap up our episode of My Project Hell. I hope everyone here really enjoyed the show. Kelly and I love doing this. Thank you so much, Rick, for jumping into the conversation. That was an awesome question. Remember, guys, you can catch our replays on My Project Hell episodes on our YouTube channel. And you can always check out our website for more information. You can even hit Kelly and I up for a half-hour free 30-minute consultation if your project needs some help.
Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate that you took time to stop by, joining us live, or maybe you caught us on our YouTube channel. We invite you to like or follow us on YouTube and go hit up our website for more information about My Project Hell. And we'll see you in a couple weeks with our next session. Take care,
Thanks, everyone.